Okay, so we're talking about profit maximization and perfect competition. And we're looking at a perfectly competitive market. So this is all the demanders together and all of the suppliers together. So each individual firm's supply curve is a marginal cost curve, and the market as a whole, the supply curve is just the sum of everybody's marginal cost curves. You take what everyone's willing to supply and you add it all up. Just like with the demand curve, we took what everyone wanted to buy and added it all up. So we have the market. The market determines the price. As we know, perfectly competitive firms are price takers. So the market, the interaction of supply and demand in the market determines the market price. Any one demander or supplier is too small to have any impact on that price. So this is just a picture of one representative firm. There's a bunch of firms that look just like this, producing the same identical product. And so these firms, when we say they're price takers, that's what this means. It means there's a market here. No matter what the firm does, increasing their output, decreasing their output, dropping out altogether, one firm is too small to shift that market supply curve at all in a noticeable way. And so the firms take the market price as given. And so there's the market price, and the individual firms just say, okay, here's price. And they take that price and they say, at that price, how much should I produce? And as we talked about before, for a perfectly competitive firm, price is marginal revenue. Price, it's not showing up very well, is it? Oh, it is over here. I was just dotted. Okay, so price is marginal revenue. The price the firms sell the output for is the amount by which the revenue goes up. Each unit they sell for the market price. Each unit they get that revenue. Let's use a number because I know sometimes numbers are easier. So let's say the market price right now is $10. Demanders and suppliers interacting in the market have determined the market price is $10. So all the individual firms just look at that and say, at a price of $10, how much should I make? The first step, always, not just for perfect competition, but for any profit maximizing firm, which we assume all our firms are, the first step in finding profit maximization is to say, at this price, where does marginal revenue equal marginal cost? That is the golden rule of profit maximization. You cannot make more profit than producing where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. So you take that price, which is the marginal revenue, you follow it over until it hits the marginal cost curve. That is your profit maximizing level of output. Just a little notational thing here. I use big Q for market output and small q for firm output when I'm making a distinction between those two things. Okay, so the price is $10. At that price, you can see out to Q star, and let's give Q star a number. Let's say it's 500. So at the price of $10, all these units add more to your revenue than they add to your cost. Remember that profit is total revenue minus total cost. So if it makes your revenue go up, if it makes your revenue get bigger by more than it makes your costs go up, that difference is going to get bigger. So anything that adds more to your revenue than it adds to your cost, anything that has a marginal revenue higher than a marginal cost is going to make your profit bigger. So as long as the marginal revenue is greater than marginal cost, you keep increasing your output. You increase your output to the point where they're equal. You don't go beyond that, because then the next units are going to add more to your cost than they add to your revenue. Your costs are going to go up by more than your revenue goes up, and your profit's going to shrink. So the very first thing you do, anytime you're looking at profit maximizing behavior for a firm, is say, where does marginal revenue intersect marginal cost? Because the firm will either produce there or not produce anything. And so it's pretty easy for a perfectly competitive firm. You take that price as given, you move it across. The firm is either going to produce here or not produce. So how do they decide that? They say, this is my profit maximizing level of output. I cannot make more profit than producing at 500 units. If the price I'm taking is $10, it is not possible to make more profit than at 500 units. I will either produce where marginal revenue equals marginal cost, or I will not produce. That's the profit maximizing firm's decision. The firm can't say, oh, I'm going to change price or anything. They're stuck with the price they're taking, and there's no other place where they can make more profit. So they say, so step one, find Q star where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. That's going to be the first thing you do. Then find profit at Q star. So you say, if I'm going to produce, I can't do any better than producing here. So this is my profit maximizing level of output. Then the next question is, how much profit am I making there? I don't see total revenue or total cost. How do I find total revenue and total cost? I've got average costs and I've got price. And I know profit is total revenue minus total cost. So I know total revenue is price times quantity. And total cost is average total cost times quantity. Right? So I know that profit is just the difference, pulling out a Q there. I just pulled out a Q from each of these expressions. Profit is the difference between price and average cost times however many units I'm producing. So the first thing I do is find where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. And then I say, how much profit am I making at Q star? And the profit is, well, I say it over here. Profit equals Q times price minus average cost. Oh, notational thing, I use pi for profit. That's pretty common in microeconomics because we can't use P for profit because we're already using P for price. So pi for profit. So I say at this level of output, because I know I'm going to produce it. So price, margin, average cost is a lot of different things, a lot of different places. I want to know what's the difference in price and average cost at my profit maximizing level of output. This is where my profit's highest. How big is it? So I say at Q star, my price is $10. At Q star, where's my average cost? My average cost is here. I don't know exactly. I'm going to call that $11. So my average cost at Q star is $11. My price is $10. My price is $10. My average cost is $11. I'm losing $1 a unit on average. And that's going on over 500 units. So my profit is negative $500. My profit is the difference between average cost and price out over all those units. That's my profit rectangle. But you can see if average cost is bigger than price, that profit's going to be negative. I'm losing money. If the price were higher, if demand for this product went up, and suddenly the market price were all the way up here, and this was market equilibrium, and the firms were taking that price as given at P1, and let's say Q star 1 equals 600. If demand went up and price went up, then I'd be making a profit. Then you could see, I'm going to call that, I'm going to call this price $14 and this 12, because that'll make it easy. So if price were higher at Q1 equals 600, in this case, profit at Q1 is 600 units and price is $14 and average cost is $12. So I'm making on average $2 a unit out over 600 units. My profit's $1,200. So if price is greater than average cost at Q star, if price is greater than average cost, that implies profit is greater than 0. And that implies that you're happy. On the other hand, if price is less than average cost, that implies your profit is less than 0 and you are sad. Sad and blue. But But that's how you illustrate profit. And it's just a good visual of when we're talking about profit. Profit is the difference between price and average cost at the quantity where price equals marginal cost. So the first thing you do always is find where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. And then you say, at that level of output, how much profit am I making? At that level of output. If I'm making a positive profit, it's all good. But if I'm making a negative profit, so if I'm positive profit, I'm all good. I have no incentive to do anything differently. I'm happy. I'd love for the market to stay there. So if the pink situation, I'd be grand. But let me get rid of the pink situation so it's not as crowded now. But if the price were lower, like it was in our original situation, so there's not much to explain. If profit's positive, the firm's happy. They're happy to stay there. Nothing else to talk about. But if we're in a situation like the blue situation, where average cost is greater than price, where firms are making a negative economic profit, then what? Negative economic profit. Should we leave? Should we go out of business? Yeah, we should. Negative economic profit means that we are earning less here than our resources could earn in the next best use. If we're earning less here than our resources could earn in our next best use, we ought to be putting those resources in their next best use. So in the long run, yes, we'd want to exit this industry, but maybe not in the short run. So if profit is less than zero, we're unhappy. But then we have to say, yeah, so in the long run, we're going to get out of business. In the long run, we're going to exit this industry, and take our resources where they can earn more. But right now, there's a difference. Remember the difference between the short run and the long run? In the short run, we're stuck with some fixed inputs. In the short run, we're stuck with some fixed costs. Even if we shut down, even if we stop producing, we're stuck with those costs. And that's why our decision is different in the short run than in the long run. Right? We might behave differently in the short and the long run, because in the short run, no matter what we do, we're going to have to pay, let's say, our rent. Our rent, we still got 6 months on our lease. No matter if we stop doing whatever, we're let's say a restaurant, and we're not making money. No one's coming because of COVID and our rent, but we're stuck with this lease for 6 months, 6 more months. That's a fixed cost. We can't get out of it. Even if we stop producing, our landlord's still going to want the rent at the first of the month. So we have to say, should we produce in the short run? In the long run, yeah, when that lease expires, we're out of here. We'll take our resources and go do something else. So negative economic profit, you definitely want to exit in the long run. But in the short run, your decision may be different. In the short run, because you're still stuck with those fixed costs, you have to think, I'm losing $500, but how much would I lose if I just stopped producing? Because if I just stop producing, I get no revenue and I still have to pay my fixed costs. So I can compare my profit at Q star to my profit at Q equals 0. What would my profit be if I just didn't produce anything? In the long run, it would be 0, right? Because I wouldn't have any costs and I wouldn't have any revenue. But at Q equals 0, I know that profit equals my total revenue minus my total cost. I'm going to spread these out, minus my total variable cost, minus my total fixed cost, because in the short run, this matters. So we know that if I make nothing, my revenue is 0. We know if I make nothing, my variable costs are 0. But if I make nothing, I've still got my fixed costs. So in the short run, if I produce nothing, my profit is equal to the negative of my fixed cost. I've got no revenue, let's say my rent's $1,500 a month. I've got no revenue. My landlord comes. I have to give him $1,500. My profit is negative $1,500. Or if we look at this particular case, we say, if we produce, we lose $500. If we don't produce anything, we're still stuck with our fixed costs. But how do we determine what our fixed costs are here? We know our total costs. Our total costs are 11 times 500. Our total costs are 5,500. But how much of those 5,500 are variable costs, not much fixed costs? I'm going to get rid of this marker graph. Just remember that price came from the market, but I want this space up here. So we know our total revenue is price times quantity. Is that showing up? Not very well. Price times quantity. So it's $10 times 500. So our revenue is $5,000. Our total costs, our average cost times quantity, or $11 times $500, or $5,500. So we could have calculated total revenue and calculated total cost and said total revenue minus total cost equals negative 500. Or we could have just found the average profit per unit and multiplied it by Q. It's the same number. It doesn't matter which way you do it. But just always, if you're using price and average cost, make sure you're using price and average cost. And if you're using total revenue, make sure you're using total cost. Don't ever compare total revenue to average cost, because then it's not going to work because those are entirely different scales. The averages, remember, are just the totals expressed on a per unit basis. Okay, so we got total revenue, we got total cost, we're losing $500. But what we need to know is, of those total costs, how much of it is variable cost that we can get rid of if we stop producing, and how much of it is fixed cost that we're stuck with if we keep producing. I mean, so that we're stuck with if we produce, but also we're stuck with even if we don't produce anything. So to do that, we need to break out our variable costs and our fixed costs. We don't have fixed costs drawn on this graph, but we know it's the difference between the average total cost and the average variable cost. But we do have the average variable cost. So we can say at Q star, again, everything matters. What matters is what the values are at Q star, at that profit maximizing level of output. So we say at Q star, what is average variable cost? So we follow from Q star up to the average variable cost curve, and that tells us at that level of output, this is what average variable cost is. I'll bring it over. I'm going to call it 8. So I know my average variable cost and I know my output. So my average variable cost is $8. My output is 500. And so my total variable cost is $4,000. So my total cost is $5,500. My total variable cost is $4,000. So my total fixed cost is just going to be total cost minus total variable cost, or $1,500. Total cost minus total variable cost, whatever isn't variable cost is fixed cost. Or I could have said at Q star, my average fixed cost is 11 minus 8 is $3. It's the difference between average cost and average variable cost. And I could have said $3 a unit times 500 units. Oops. Let's be consistent. Average fixed cost times Q equals $3 a unit times 500 units equals $1,500. I could have done it either way. I could have got my totals and said, here's my total cost, here's my total variable cost, so my total fixed cost is the difference. Or I could say, here's my average cost, here's my average variable cost, my average fixed cost is the difference, and then multiply that by Q. Either way, I come up with the same answer. My total fixed costs are $1,500. So if I produce, I lose $500. If I don't produce, I lose $1,500. Even though my profit is 0, even though I know I want to exit in the long run, I'm not going to exit now. Right now, I make my restaurant food. I collect $5,000 in revenue. I pay all my variable costs. I pay my workers. I pay for my meat. I pay for all the other stuff. I pay all my variable costs, all 4,000 of them. I still have $1,500. I pay all my variable costs. I still have, wait, where am I? My variable cost of $4,000. My revenue is $5,000. So I pay all my variable costs and I still have $1,000 left. I have my $5,000 revenue. I pay all my $4,000 variable costs. I still have $1,000 left. So when the landlord comes knocking on my door, where's my rent? Where's my rent? And I'm like, $1,500 rent. I don't have it, but I got $1,000 because even after I paid all my variable costs, I had $1,000 left. So I can give you that. I'm still out $500. But by producing and generating $5,000 of revenue, I pay all my variable costs of $4,000 and have $1,000 left over to at least put towards my rent. So instead of losing $1,500, which I would lose if I shut down, I only lose $500. So I want to exit in the long run, but in the short run, as long as I can cover my variable costs, the costs that I have a choice about, I should keep producing. So as long as, in the short run, if price is greater than average variable cost, stay open because you lose less at Q star than at Q equals 0. That's just shorthand for saying by producing at the profit maximizing level of output, I only lose $500. If I didn't produce, I would lose my entire fixed cost. I would lose $1,500. So if I can cover, if price is greater than average variable cost, that's saying the money I'm generating is enough to cover my variable cost of production. Those costs that I have a choice about, the ones that if I shut down, I don't have. If I operate and I incur those costs and I can pay all of them and have something left to put to my fixed costs, then I may as well do it. But if price is less than average variable cost, shut down now. If you can't even cover your variable costs, you shouldn't incur them. You have a choice about it. If you think of workers as your variable cost, if you can't pay your workers, don't hire them, right? You've still got $1,500 rent, but if you're taking your revenue and you're paying your suppliers and you're paying all this and you're paying your workers and all your revenue is gone and you've still got some workers standing there and your workers are saying, hey, where's my money? Where's my money? And then you hear the knocking door, where's my rent? Where's my, and the people are saying, where's my money? Where's my money? Where's my rent? Like you got nothing, right? You have not even enough to pay your workers, let alone put anything towards that fixed rent. In that case, just shut down. Don't incur those variable costs if you can't cover them. But if you can cover those variable costs and put something towards those fixed costs, you're going to be stuck with those fixed costs anyhow. So in the short run, your decision of whether to produce or not depends only on variable costs. In the short run, those fixed costs are effectively sunk. There's nothing you can do about them. So in the short run, you're just saying, if I can cover my variable costs, then I'll incur them. If I can't cover them, I won't, because those are the only things I have control over. In the long run, if you can't cover all your costs, then you may as well get out of business and take your activity elsewhere. Take your resources and put them where they're more highly valued. And this, we talk about this in the context of perfect competition, but I want to say this shutdown rule and profit maximization, all of this is the same regardless. This is just true of any profit maximizing firm. Perfect competition just happens to be the first model we're looking at. The only difference is what the revenue curve looks like, but everything about producing where marginal revenue equals marginal cost, looking to see what your profit is. If your profit is negative, leave in the long run. If you're covering your variable costs, stay at least in the short run. All that is true for all profit maximizing firms. It just looks a little different when your marginal revenue curve looks different, as we'll see when we move on to monopoly.